Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the apartment building wealth generation system. This is a bonus module. It's one of two bonus modules I have scheduled here, and we're going to review the acquisition of a property. So let's jump right in and get going here. So as I mentioned, it is a two-part presentation, acquisition of a real deal. This is a 53-unit, two-building acquisition. We're going to talk about how we found the deal, the steps in making the offer, how we did a quick analysis, making an acceptable offer, the due diligence process where we were verifying the financials as well as inspecting the property before removal of conditions, and identifying any major issues and renegotiating the deal. Now, leading up to the acquisition of this property, we actually came across this particular property here, which is a bit different. Again, two buildings, 48 units, for an asking price of $3.499 million. This was in mid-March, and we took a look at the property. It looked of interest to me. I was very familiar with the property. So what we discovered, though, was after we did some research and due diligence, we discovered the true value to be 2.964. I've got a good relationship with First National, so I sent them the numbers, and they very quickly ran the numbers for me, and their valuation, even more conservative than my own, came back at a valuation of $2.72 million. Now, there were some challenges with this property, aside from just the price. There was also the fact that it is a 3-story walk-up. There was no elevator, so 2.5 stories is about the maximum that you want to go without elevators. Once you get into 3 stories, it starts to become a challenge to rent that top floor because there's 2 full flights of stairs for people to walk up. They also provided us with very understated expenses. In other words, they didn't disclose all of the truly related expenses. They also provided us with an inaccurate appraisal, which wasn't their fault. The appraisal company should have known better and should have done a much better job with the appraisal, in my opinion, in this particular case. And the last issue with this property is that it had electric baseboard heat, which is very it's understandable when you build a property. Electric baseboard is very cost effective to put in, but during the last few years, since 2010, the cost of electricity in Ontario has skyrocketed, so it doesn't make it very desirable for the tenants. The results of this particular opportunity was that I made an initial offer of $3.2 million with the intent of renegotiating at a certain point in time to get it down closer to what I wanted. They also accepted a vendor take-back with the deal, which was in our favor, and they had a backup offer waiting for this property. So this size of property is very popular, and they don't last on the market very long at all. Because they had a backup offer and they had this appraisal done by a professional company, they felt very confident that they would be able to get closer to the 3.499. So there was no willingness to negotiate, especially given the fact they had this backup offer waiting. So I actually arranged a meeting with both the seller and the agent to explain our situation. I even did a PowerPoint presentation showing them the actual value of the property based upon the numbers, the real numbers, showing them how the appraisal was inaccurate. And they both agreed, however, and I can't blame them, that they decided to go with the backup offer in hopes that they would get more money for the property. So we ended up walking away from that deal, but we walked away on friendly terms towards the end of April. And then very, very shortly after that, like within weeks, we received another opportunity in the same municipality. This was 2 more apartment buildings, a little bit bigger in that they were 4 stories and they had elevators. So these are the buildings that we bought. So I'll walk you through the initial steps here. So I received this flyer in the form of an email because I'm on their email list. And the moment that I received that flyer, I responded immediately, asking for more details. And one of the things that they ask you to do in larger transactions like this is sign a confidentiality agreement for each potential opportunity. So did all of that. I reviewed the financials very quickly then because they were very organized and they were able to provide all of this information very, very quickly the same day. And as a result, I made an offer all within a period of 24 hours. Now I make my offers, as you've seen in the program, sight unseen. Just before I get to that, the other thing was that this was on I want to say it was on I think it was a Monday, the beginning of the week. And in the email they sent out, they said they were arranging viewings for all potential buyers on one particular day. It was either Thursday or Friday of that same week. So what they're trying to do is just leverage their time and also cause as little disruption to the tenants of the building as possible. Plus, they're also creating a sense of urgency and sort of fueling the fire a little bit, so that more people are there and they see there's other people interested, then they're more likely to pay more for the property. So I didn't want to get into that potential frenzy, so I made the offer without going and seeing the property ahead of time. So these are the numbers that were provided, and I put them in my spreadsheet, and I was impressed right off the get-go, because if you can see down near the bottom of the page in the middle column, the total expenses are 45%, which are close to what they should be. The market value came in very close to what the asking price was as well. So I was very excited to see these numbers in my analysis. So those are the four key indicators. Therefore, I made my offer based upon these numbers, and they accepted my offer of $4.7 million. Now, the conditions that I put in, financing, I wanted 4 to 6 weeks because I was going with CMHC financing. They would not allow me to put in 4 to 6 weeks. So they only gave me 2 weeks. I wasn't going to make that a game breaker. I figured, well, we'll get the 2 weeks, get it under contract, and see what we could do and worry about the financing as we approach the end of the 2 weeks. I also had to have inspection clauses, and I had to have multiple inspection clauses because of the building this size. You need not only the building, you need the envelope, you need the roof, you need the boilers, you need the elevators, all kinds of inspections. And I also wanted to have all of the documents in my hands so that I could review them. And that included the profit and loss, the fire certificate, all of the leases, utility bills, etc. And this is one of the few properties that I bought where everything was already prepared ahead of time. So the listing brokerage, they had all of the information, they had all of the documents organized, put into PDF files. So the moment they had an accepted offer, they just gave me access to this file folder, and I was able to review them immediately. So then we had to raise some capital for this property. We'd already gone through the process of raising capital for the 2 previous properties that we didn't close on. So we had some already interested candidates. So we contacted all of these interested investors. We presented them a live webinar detailing the opportunity and showing the ownership structure for this deal. We accepted a very small group of investors, and we asked for an initial investment deposit, sign of good faith. Plus, I had to put down a $50,000 deposit, so I wanted to get some money up front. And the balance of the money required would have to be paid to us in full prior to the removing of conditions, because the last thing I would want to find out is that I remove conditions, and 2 weeks prior to closing the deal, one of the partners backs out and I don't have any money to close on the deal. Created a new co-tenancy agreement. Now this is the co-tenancy agreement that's included in the program, and this co-tenancy agreement was created with the help, while my lawyer created it, and then it was reviewed by all of the partners' lawyers, and it went back and forth several times. But to be honest, there weren't a lot of changes. It was a lot of little nitpicky stuff, and because of the time and all of the lawyers involved, etc., the cost of this particular co-tenancy agreement was in excess of $15,000, and the time spent to create it took us weeks and weeks. Then it was time for the diligence on the property. So starting off with the inspections, we have the building and unit inspections. So I have an engineer that comes in and she reviews the entire building, looking at the envelope, all of the structure inside and out. And then she goes into each of the individual units and does a quick inspection there as well. Had an elevator, a third-party independent elevator inspector come in and inspect the elevators. Anything to do with the mechanical room, so the boilers, for example, were all inspected. Had my roofer, who is a commercial roofer, come in and inspect the roofs. Because of the CMHC financing, there was environmental reports and inspection that needed to be done. And last but not least, the insurance appraiser would come out to insure the property and make sure it was in good condition for the insurance. Now, during the diligence of inspecting the property, we discovered that there was one older elevator in one of the buildings and one newer elevator in the other building. And we had an estimated cost of $150,000 to replace that. It was approaching the end of its life cycle, so we knew it was going to have to be done. The next thing we discovered was both roofs on the buildings needed to be replaced. They were still original roofs that had been patched. So this was going to cost approximately $120,000 for the two roofs. The last thing was the older boilers in one of the buildings was going to need to be, well, they're old, they're inefficient, but they're still working fine. And when it comes time to replace those, they'll be in the $15,000 to $25,000 price point. All of the financials provided were verified, and including all the expenses. And as I mentioned earlier, they were all previously uploaded online for easy access and viewing, and also easily organized as well. So then it came time to renegotiate. Now, in an ideal world, what you're looking for is a motivated seller. Somebody perhaps who is suffering from poor health or experiencing some financial distress. You're also looking for or a distressed property which needs, it's in need of many repairs with a high vacancy as well, because that drives the value down of the property. Or it's being managed poorly by the property management company. Also buyer's markets where there's more properties for sale than buyers looking to buy them. Well, in our particular deal, the health of the owner was not an issue, nor was the financial stress. Therefore, we didn't really have a motivated seller. The property itself was not in need of many repairs, and it was 100% occupied, so we didn't have that high vacancy. So again, we didn't have a distressed property. The property management, it was excellent. Very well-run property management company. So that was not an issue for nothing that we could renegotiate there as well. And we were definitely not in a buyer's market. As soon as properties come on of this nature, they go very quickly. It's actually more of a seller's market. So there wasn't a whole lot of leverage for us there or power for us to renegotiate. But what we do keep in mind is that keep in mind the psychology of a sale. So when you have a conditional sale, in the mind of the seller, even though it's conditional, they're starting to think that it's sold. Then the longer that the conditions run for, the more it becomes sold in the mind of the seller. And this is a good thing, because prior to removing the final conditions, this is when you do what we call a takeaway strategy. So you renegotiate, you threaten to walk away from the deal unless we can renegotiate some favorable terms. And in the mind of the seller, as I say, it's already been sold, so they're very disappointed and not wanting to start over. So this is my only motivation to renegotiate. So our options are to renegotiate a price based upon the inspection results, including the elevator with an estimated cost of $150,000, the roofs at an estimated cost of $120,000 combined, the boilers for an estimated cost of $15,000 to $20,000. Now, these items listed above were initially identified when I did my first walkthrough. However, I did not identify these as an issue at the time. In other words, I kept my mouth shut. especially when with respect to the roofs. The property manager who was showing us the property, he was claiming the roofs are in excellent shape, but yet you could take a look around and say, no, they're not. But now is not the time to get into a discussion about the condition of the roofs or the conditions of the boilers, etc. You save that for later. So I wanted to wait until these issues were identified later in the process, so that by the appropriate inspector. So even though it was very apparent to me, and with my education and background, I could do my own inspections, I still rely on the inspection report from the inspectors that we hire, because they're third-party independent individuals, and they tend to carry more weight with respect to the seller when it comes time for renegotiating. So option number one was the seller reduced the price by $290,000. The second option is to split the costs and reduce the price by $145,000 each. Option three would be that the seller absolutely refuses to do anything to reduce the price. And I was prepared for that as well, because again, the buildings overall were in good condition, and I knew that they would sell very quickly. The property was priced right. So somebody else would come in behind us and pick that property up. So even if the seller, in this case, refused to negotiate on the $290,000, we probably still would have purchased the property. However, what happened was we negotiated, and we decided to split the price of the repairs. So we had two choices. We could amend the purchase price, or amend the terms to the deal. So what we did was we left the purchase price at the original $4.7 million, because we had already started to go down the road of financing that property with CMHC. And if you start changing the prices and the terms and conditions, it's like putting the brakes onto the whole financing process and having to start from the beginning. So what our lender suggested was seeing if we could have the seller do these repairs as part of the purchase price, which is exactly what we did. So we left the purchase price at the original value of 4.7, but both buildings were going to receive a new rubber membrane roof by our contractor under our terms prior to closing, for a price of about $120,000, which was a little bit less than splitting the repairs 50-50. And I did it this way to entice the seller to realize that this is a really good deal for them, because they already agreed to split the cost, but now they don't have to split the cost. They just have to pay for these two new roofs. So that's exactly what we did. With respect to the boilers, they are what they are. They're older, they're inefficient. We can't really replace them with new efficient furnaces because of the location. So replacing them with new furnaces is going to be about the same efficiency. So then there's not a whole lot to these boilers, so we're just going to let them run as is. With the elevator, we knew that going into the process was an older elevator, would need to be replaced. So we just decided to accept that and start to budget accordingly. So as you can see here, looking back at the analysis again, down at the bottom, what I did was I increased the budget for the elevator as well as the replacements. So we were setting aside $30,000 out of the revenues, which put our total expenses up over 50% and dropped our average profit down to about $140 per month. But this would allow us to have, in 5 years' time, at $30,000, $150,000 to put towards the elevator. So, time to remove the conditions. So, we've got the inspections, document review, verification, the finance in place, but it's 2 weeks, too short for CMHC. So what we had to do, they wouldn't extend the financing, but we arranged through the bank, the lender, backup financing, so that in the worst case scenario, we didn't get our financing in place with CMHC. We had a backup option. It wasn't our first choice, but we felt comfortable enough to remove the financing condition at that point in time. So for our investors, what did the projected returns look like? Based on the cash flow, their cash and cash flow return on investment was just under 8%. When we include the principal pay down and a 4% appreciation, their return on investment jumps up to 32.6% annually. And the plan is that in year 5, the investors will refinance the property. The investors will receive their initial investment back. If we can give them 100% of their initial investment, our cash flow will drop, but the cash flow the investors receive will now be an infinite return for them because they've got their initial investments back out. So that's our goal. At this point in time, it doesn't look like we'll achieve that goal, but we'll be darn close to it. So in module number 9, it'll be part 2. What we're going to be looking at is the closing process, all of the paperwork required, working with investors, the transition process, management, and a year 1 plan of action. If you have any questions or need any help, you can just contact us at info@arca-wa.com, or you can contact myself at apartmentwealthgeneration@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next webinar.